What is going on, y'all? It's your boy 3MG. We are back with another video. Now, I have to do a better job at posting my Chucky show like review, after it airs every Wednesday night. And that way I can get your everyone's opinion below in the comment section. And if you wish to watch it live with me and try to get like some reactions and some personal thoughts while we're live, follow me on Twitch, man, twitch.tv/3MG live, man. And we can really just talk about horror movies and play games and just have a lot of fun and shit. So let's talk about this episode. This was season 2, episode 4. I believe it was called Death on Denial. So forgive me if I'm wrong. It gave me a very old school murder mystery and the style that they went. But let me just break down the details of this, and then we're gonna talk about stuff that just how I felt, my personal opinion. But pretty much what I got from this episode was, it showed the perspective of Glenn and Glenda, which we were waiting for like about a couple of episodes ago, because they had showed a, next week, or they showed the next preview of the next Chucky show, and we seen Glenn and Glenda. However, last week it was still focused in the church or that school, and this week now I guess we can all say that we were pleased to see that it focused just straight up on shit fights. So, that being said, we get to meet Glenn and Glenda. And some of the details, such as Glenda expressing that she doesn't feel whole and they feel empty. And that's because, remember, their souls were split when they were kids. Another thing, too, is they are not the murderers, or they're not the killers or the slashers in respects to, Tiffany and Chucky. So they're still young teens trying to understand who they are and finding themselves, while at the same time unfolding the truth about their family. It was hard for me to understand and digest that they didn't know who their dad was. But then again, if you try to reference too much of Seed of Chucky, even I can sit here and say that wouldn't be a good idea. So kind of, retwisting that story and bringing something new to the table, I'm okay with that, because Seed of Chucky was just one of those movies that I was like, like it was too much. It was fourth wall, now that I learned the term, and it was just all over the place. So in this particular episode, we found that the kids, they know their mother is Jennifer Tilly, but now they're questioning because they found out some details that their mom may not be Jennifer Tilly after all, but still Tiffany Valentine that's inside the body of Jennifer Tilly. And it featured a lot of cast members who were in OG films that had some sort of relation with Jennifer Tilly. There was a lot of puns, a lot of Easter eggs and stuff like that. Don Mancini paying homage, which is always a fun thing to go into with this Chucky, or this version of Chucky. Before I give you guys my personal feelings on these things, let's just move it along and just say that, after someone getting murdered, Jennifer Tilly tried to finesse the situation and turn it into a murder mystery. And they were trying to figure out who killed who, because they're trying to break into the secret room where Jennifer Tilly's keeping Nika. Now, apparently, and somehow, they do acts where they do 3 months before, and they do all these things where Glenn and Glenda actually went through that room and found Nika in there. So they understood who Nika was. They got some information out of her. But then also, I guess there was some triggers happening, because I think one of the kids, I think it was Glenda, had cut, her finger, and then all of a sudden, it triggered Nika turning into Chucky, and that's how they unfolded who their dad was, and kind of giving memory to it. And I don't know if I'm correct, but referencing episode 1, when the Chuckies inside the truck kept listening to Tiffany, and they kept repeating Andy's name, and then they finally remembered where he's from, or who's Andy, kind of gave me the impression that was going to happen throughout the whole show. So now we see Glenn and Glenda kind of remembering a little bit of their background, remembering a little bit when they mentioned Shitface, and then you see Nika, who I guess Chucky had came out of Nika, and calls his kids Shitface. He says, "I say it with love," and everything. So he kind of came in with some comedic relief on there, but he's bringing back memories. He's bringing back, the childhood, or he's bringing back those times that now these kids are starting to remember. And long story short, within this episode, they get Nika to escape, and they jump right into a truck in a van at the end. Jennifer Tilly is going ballistic. She's going crazy. And who ends up in the truck? Kyle. So Kyle we all knew she wasn't gonna die season 1. She's a very important person, very important cast member to the Chucky universe, and the style of which she died in season 1, or at least we thought she died, wouldn't have been a great way for her to go out. You know what I mean? So they introduced her in the last episode, but it was kind of confusing because Glenn stays home and doesn't want to leave his mom because Glenn has always been the more curious, your mama's boy, whereas Glenda was really the inviting to horror, I like to kill, and we seen that in Seed of Chucky, and that's the, you know, that's what I loved about splitting their souls. So we have 2 different versions of Glenda basically, but it was confusing because while Nika's also inside of the van, Nika wants Chucky outside of her body and out of her head. Kyle wants to kill Chucky. Glenda wants to meet with her father and get along and understand her dad. So it's like all 3 have different purposes of being in this truck. I don't know how that relationship is gonna work. I didn't understand how they got in contact with Kyle. I was a little confused, and that's why I like to watch episodes again after when there's nobody around to try to digest and observe and absorb every piece of detail that I get from these episodes. Now, you see, I try not to spoil every detail, but let's really now talk about how I feel. This had me questioning the direction of Chucky moving forward, because although we got exposed to some real hit-on details with Glenn and Glenda and Jennifer Tilly and how they're about to unfold the truth of that family, and I think it's gonna make for such a fire-ass story later, the execution kind of lost me. It was an episode, it felt like a filler. It was so different from the Chucky shows that we've been seeing. It's almost like you took this out and it was like a throwaway. And you know what it felt like? It felt like ad placement. I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out. It felt like ad placement. There was a lot of shit going on in this episode, a lot of nostalgia, a lot of homage being played. And when this is my personal opinion, I will forever love Chucky, but this episode specifically had a lot of problems. There was a point, I think, at the end of the show where I even questioned Chucky's voice. It was so unnatural. It was like, okay, let's go. And then all of a sudden, the Brad Dourif voice came out. I wondered, did they even realize that they fucked up his voice at some point in the show? I was confused. Also, the introduction of Glenn and Glenda, you can clearly see Glenn with the long hair was casted or reshot in the film. The lighting wasn't casted correctly next to Glenda and Jennifer Tilly. You can tell that when Glenda gave a kiss to her mom, and then all of a sudden when Glenn reaches to give a kiss, you hear the same sound effect, but their bodies don't even touch. It was weird. You could tell that Glenn was more in the foreground and was like more forward and was green screened in. I even questioned, was I seeing a little discoloration around Glenn's body? So I need to go back and check. It wasn't a well done reshot, in my opinion. Even when Glenn sat on the couch, it felt reshot. We ended up finding out after with dead meat and just some of the information we got that, yeah, it was a bunch of reshots, and I think they could have done a better job. However, that wasn't the end all be all of the episode. It could have still went on. The problem was the dialogue between characters that were introduced this episode who, respectfully, I know them for other movies. I also know that Jennifer Tilly worked with a couple of them outside of the Chucky show. But can I just say that being a Chucky fan, I sat here like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I was like, yo, what? This dialogue is it was so dry. The dialogue was very underwhelming. And it was so much that I was just like, what is all this, man? Like, it was all over the place, in my opinion. One of my least favorite episodes of the season, I think probably the worst episode out of season 1 and so far in season 2. It was something that I couldn't digest well. And let's just talk about the fact that there were things appearing that I didn't understand. Like, for example, when Nika came out of the elevator, and obviously Chucky had took over her body. Somehow Glenda was able to give her prosthetic arms, and all this time, like, it was just so weird how things would appear, and I was just all over the place. Now, let me be honest. I love Child's Play 2. I love the horror, the old school horror kind of scary vibe of Chucky. I don't know if Don Mancini will ever go back to that. I can see that, he really finds his enjoyment from bringing still that comedy side of Chucky out, which I don't mind. It's really just about how you execute the story. But I'm also getting confused because I don't know what's the direction of this show. Are they trying to soul swap? Are they trying to cause havoc in the town? Are they just trying to fuck with these kids? Like, I don't know the direction of where this show's gonna end up, and if there is a sole purpose. With previous Chucky movies, we understood they wanted to swap their souls back with human bodies to live a regular life. It never works. So Chucky was out here killing people in the mix. Like, we understand. In this case, it's a very confusing situation. And this episode, I love when people pay homage and give us Easter eggs of other films and all that stuff. What I don't want is the paying homage to be the filler. And because there's not much depth, or maybe a budget may not have been commenced, or something may not went through, just everything you do is about paying homage. And it was all over the place. I can sit here and tell you that I love the fact that Chucky, they finally got an interaction with their dad, and we're about to see something huge. But the dialogue was very bad. I didn't like the idea that this episode almost got casted like a TV show, where it's like a live TV show and Chucky's talking between different acts, and then all of a sudden at the end we get Liv Morgan, who I believe is a WWE superstar. She's a big fan of Chucky, and that even got like all over the place. And I don't like the introduction, how they brought her in. It felt like ad placement. It felt like, let's be safe, we can get some money off this and then help film the rest of the season. And this is just an ad placement. Might be a throwaway, like when Drake dropped music, he might just drop like 2 songs, and one of them is a throwaway, holds people down. And this is what it felt like. The characters in the show, it felt like bad act. It wasn't that it was bad acting. It was like scenery, and the story being told in this episode was just poorly executed. That's just my opinion. I will still love Chucky, and I'm still gonna love to watch the show. Because when everything ties together, we're gonna get a very deep and rich story, I believe. The way Kyle got introduced was, for me, a slap in the face, because being that this episode was all over the place, I did not, and I repeat, I did not like to see it happen like that. I mean, it is what it is. This episode though was very lackluster, to where we started looking at shit and we noticed the main points without having to know that, or without having to digest the fact that he tied it in with something. And it just wasn't hitting this episode, honestly. So I say that to say, go watch season 4 for yourself. It felt like a throwaway. And I think at the end, when Chucky was stabbing Liv and he kept saying the word fuck, and he was basically kind of like taunting and really being funny about how TV works, because it is true. You can't say fuck a certain amount of times in the beginning of a segment, or else it will be considered like, you can't monetize it or something like that, non-monetary. But the way he did it at the end was kind of hilarious. It was a very sloppy episode, in my opinion. It was different, but at the same token, it made me question the direction that this show was going, and what we're going to look forward to in the upcoming shows. I think they have 12 episodes. But look, I didn't want to spoil everything. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below about this episode. Also have, how do I say this? I also have Terrifier 1 and 2 that I did a reaction, and I must say, those fucking movies are great. So I gotta tip my hat to Art the Clown. Like, I ain't gonna lie. The team, they did their thing. Is fucking bloody and gory as shit. Okay, that shit, at some point I stopped eating. I said, oh, fuck this. Let me watch this film first and then eat after. This shit was crazy. But yeah, your boy 3MG. Follow me on Instagram, 3MG Live, TikTok, 3MG Live, Twitch, 3MG Live, where we always go live. And of course, 3MG Gaming, because I go live there too, but I play other types of games. I love y'all so much, man. Please drop your opinions below, man, on this show. I'm out. It's your boy. Peace.